is Namasori. Welcome back to React and MobX lecture. We will continue with the props practice example from last time. Last time we create the folder structure and as a template we place the book.js containing static data and the images to be listed in the public folder. Now we will create an app component, a BookList component, and a BookList item component, and create a structure using props so that the list from screen can be displayed. Now, as this is the first time to create a component, we are going to proceed slowly. So you just need to follow along carefully one by one. Then the first thing we want to change is to change the component called app in app.js. When we first compose a project with create React app, a file called app.js is created. This app component called app.js is basically made as a functional component. However, let's see how to change this functional component app to a class-based component. First, we are going to create a React component, so we need to make it in a form that inherits the component class from React. But we can create the React component and then we will import React. So let's type import React from React. Import the module and then change app define as a function into a class. And you're going to extend your inheriting components that belongs to React. So React the component as a class that inherits the components that React has. You will define a specific component. Components based on this class must define the render method. So let's remove return and add render method inside. Later, when we create a component based on a lifecycle class, there are three types of components that are created by default. One has props, and another one is state, and another one is lifecycle method. And when explaining this lifecycle method, you will see the render method again. But keep in mind here, class-based components must redefine the render method. This render method must have return. The subject of this return must return the React element. So when the React library loads the screen, we call this render method on the component we provide and display the React element that is returned on the screen through the virtual DOM. So when returning, we always return one create element, and we usually return elements using the JXX syntax at this time. Class-based components inherit React components and must redefine render method. The return statement must be added in the render method, and you need to know that what is returned in the return statement is React element. In the form of inheriting React components, you can inherit it like this. But I can write it like this. Open the curly braces when importing from the React libraries, React module. After writing component like this, you can import in the form of inheriting only the component without reacting in front of it. When JavaScript was first introduced, the first JavaScript language had no concept of modularity. For example, in the case of Java, it was possible to modularize this by creating a single Java file for each class, but the existing JavaScript was not modularized. So ES6, of course before ES5, it was modularized using a variety of modular libraries such as CommonJS, but based on Ecmascript 6, modules called import and export were imported and modules were created and provided to the outside. A syntax called export was added. However, there are two ways to export. If there is an export default and the export is export, you must put the exported subject in curly brace when importing. This part is about Ecmascript 6 grammar, so while studying React, we will not cover the contents in more depth, but we are conducting the class on the premise that you know Ecmascript 6 to some extent. So sometimes we will explain specific parts. But basically, if you're not sure about the contents of such import and export, it will be helpful to look up the import and export syntax of Ecmascript 6 and its concept. Anyway, we made a class called app in the form of component inheriting components from React. Now, we need to create a list and put the list items included in the list. First, we will create a book list and a book list item. We will make the book list item next time. Basically, we will make a book list. And we will use the list and list items represented in the book list from the Material UI. I briefly explained what the Material UI is last time. First of all, we don't have anything to make in the app. After making the book list, we will move on. So create a new file in the src folder under the components folder. Create a new file named called booklist.js. And because this book list component is also React component, import React and component from React. And let's define it as class. Class book list extends component. As what I said, the component needs to have render method. And inside the render method, it must have return statement. Now, after creating a basic frame of the component like this, we will use the list and list items in the Material UI. So let's import now. Now we are going to bring a list of components. I'm going to bring something called list and list item from Material UI core. In the Material UI core, there are several ways to import it. Material UI core, it is a component that is designed to have a style sheet applied to the corresponding component, such as a list or list item. When providing these components, both the export method and the export default method are provided. I will get the list from the Material UI core like this way. Import list from Material UI core /list. But in this case, you have to write it 2 lines to get the list and list item. Like this. You have to write the list item in 2 lines in this form. Now you can see this code as well. If you look at how we use the component in the Material UI API, it is usually imported like this, and an example code is written. But we are not importing the export default in the form of importing the above export, but importing them in the form of opening curly braces and listing them in the form of importing and exporting. So we will put the list item in the list and simply upload the text to see if the items actually appear. How to check is to put the list component inside the return statement. And I will put the list item inside the list. Actually, we will put the book list item we'll make in this list item. First of all, we will make the book list item next time, so we will simply put the text. However, when writing this text, a component called typography is provided by the Material UI. I will use the typography later. For a simple example, I will just put one or two more text item 01 and I will copy this and I will put item 02 and item 03. And I made a list of items 1, 2, and 3. If we have created a book list component like this, we also need to export the book list component so that the app component can fetch it and use it. So I will export book list outside by default. So type export default book list. So if you write book list like this and save it, you have made a component called book list so that you can use it outside. Then in app.js, write this book list in this return statement, book list. We will return the book list if the book list we created is not automatically imported like this. You have to write this part yourself. So I created a component called app that is the top root. The app component has become a form that includes a book list component. This book list component has a list and list items as a Material UI. Then we need to do the work of sending the component called app to the div tag whose div tag ID of index.html that we talked about it last time inside the root so that the React DOM library can go to the root part and show the actual element. And you can check the ID was defined in the index.js. I defined the app in this while calling the render method inside the React DOM render. You can see React DOM is from the library called React DOM, not from the React. The React strict mode you see here is the strict mode option used in the development process. It doesn't matter if you don't have it. Later, when you go to the production mode, this part is missing. If you look at it very simply, it serves to display a warning message when there is possibility that some errors may occur. For example, by using the life cycle incorrectly, it is the mode that is now in React strict mode to check the error. It doesn't matter if you don't have a React strict mode. So if it's this production mode, so if you go out to the product, then there's no React strict mode. So it doesn't matter if you don't have this part. While calling the render method to React DOM, we provided the app component that we made as the root as a parameter, and we sprayed it on the document element that doesn't have a root ID. Then in the app, what do we contain? The book list is included, and the Material UI contains the list and list items in the book list. Once you're done, let's save it in app.js and run it. In the project we are making, let's go to the terminal and type yarn start and it will run the script and then it will start. And so if you proceed with the project, the list will be up and you can see it in the localhost URL 3000. And then basically we created a book list component with the component list and list item of the Material UI. And now the structure is made in the form that the book list component is included in the root app component includes. We haven't released props. The props haven't been released yet, but I made a book list. Now I need to print out the data about the book, the data about the book will be passed to the props from app.js. You need to understand the structure that we showed you last time, but we will transfer the data of the books to the props as a book list with the app, and we will drop the data on the book list and books back to the book list items as props. Now we'll proceed about the book list item in the next lecture later. First of all, you have to do the work of delivering book to the book list in the app. Now, in order to deliver the way, the app must first bring the data about the book. So we will add another import statement, import books from static data folder and call books. So we can use this books data available for us to use it in the app component file. Now this data has to be passed to the book list as a prop to the object array that contains the information for the entire book. When handing over to props, how to hand it over is to give the name books as if you were assigning an attribute to the HTML tag. This is my random name. After using the interpersonal operator, I told you to open and close curly braces and put the JavaScript code in it. Right now, this grammar with brackets and close brackets is JXX grammar. I mentioned if you want to use JavaScript code within this grammar, you have to write it in curly braces. Here, you're writing books like this, and then the props name books were delivered to the book list. That's why I handed over that data. Now, in the case, I want to get the data of the books from the book list point of view. How to get it? Let's look at it simple first. So now you can declare const books equal this dot props dot books. Like this. If you define props in this form, in the app object we include, define the name of the process and specify that you want to give some data. This props is because you created a class-based component. This dot props is because you created a class-based book list component in the relevant component book list. The object call exists in this component. If you look in this prop, you can receive the data provided by the component that contains the app like this. Now, you can also receive it like this way. Const, braces, type books, and just type this dot props. Usually it uses like this way a lot, and also it can be expressed like this. Now this grammar is called structure decomposition assignment in Ecmascript 6. Details related to this will be explained in detail next time, and once the data on the books is left from the app component to the book list component, the list form is displayed when the data is retrieved from this book and the values are sent to each item. It's been a while time has passed. This lecture will be summarized here. Next time, we'll make a book list item and check the data of props and print it out. Thank you for listening, and I hope I will see you again in the next lecture. And I hope you will follow this step one by one so that you can actually experience how to use the class-based component and create your own component. Thank you.